There was a Brownlow medal on Monday night that might take a little bit more unpacking than what the prelims did. So let's do that. Let's get the facts out the way first. Patrick Cripps, absolute superstar, dominant footballer, a terrific captain, and an all-time great now. And I will stand by that. Probably was already, but that's fine. And a well-deserving dual Brownlow medalist after Monday night. I'm proud that he's the captain of my club, the club I love. And if you have any sort of moral compass, there's not really much you can say about the bloke and him as a footballer. You just can't, or you're wrong. So congratulations, Cripper, on a fantastic year. 45 votes, breaks the record, actually smashes the record into pieces, mind you. Is that a ridiculous amount of votes in the current system? Yes. Yes. Is it reflective of the actual season Cripps has had next to some of the all-time great seasons? No. Is it also relative, in my opinion, to this season in and of itself? Potentially. Because what I think is it was a season that was dominated by the individual brilliance of certain players, Cripps being one of those. Patrick Cripps played in a team that I would class as, for the majority of the season, bridging between a slightly above average and below average as a team for most portions of the year. And he was the outright dominant standout in about 20 of those 22 games for Carlton, 23 games for Carlton, however many we played this year. I don't even know how many games teams play anymore. 22. Um, no, 23. What am I talking about? Yeah, he was the standout in about 20 of those games. I had him breaking the record, and I think anyone who had taken enough of a deep dive into the games that he played would have had him at least very close, regardless of whether he should be that close. It does not reflect the season he's had compared to a Dusty or some of the great seasons of the 90s and 80s and the early 2000s. Of course not. So people who are using that point and saying, oh, but he's not as good as Dusty was in 2017. Of course not. Of course not. But it's relative to what has happened this year, in my opinion. Um, does the way this count has gone now bring into question the method in which the count is decided through when some of the games where he polled were probably underwhelming ones? I look in particular to the Essendon game where I probably wouldn't have given, oh, I didn't give him any votes. I say probably. He got no votes for me in that game. And I think he got two behind Elijah Hollins. So yeah, games like that, games like the Freo game where I also gave him none, and I think he got one or two there. Did he get three there? I forget what where he got what. Still would have brought it would have brought him down to about 40 if he didn't get those votes that he probably should have gotten. He still would have broken the record and people would still be complaining, in my opinion. But it does bring into question the way that umpires are deciding these votes. This does also apply to Nick Dacos and a few others, though, who are getting votes that they probably shouldn't have gotten the other night. So it's happening across the league. So this is not a Patrick Cripps problem. It's not. Um, it was even happening to Lockie Neal last year when he won it. There were so many votes there that I say so many, there were a few votes there that he shouldn't have gotten. And people kicked up a stink then. So it happens. So that then brings into question, how do we solve this? And Andrew Dillon has said that they're not going to do anything for now. And he's ruled out any sort of rule changes that the award could have, at least in the near future, it seems. Um, the first one is giving stats to umpires because they can't use stats when they're giving votes. There are two sides to this suggestion. So on one hand, it's giving them stats could influence them in a sense that, say, a game like I don't know how many votes he got for this game. I can't remember. But say a game like Nick Dacos's game against Adelaide, where he had those 41 touches and wasn't as impactful. If it were a game where they would be thinking to give zero votes to Nick Dacos, and then they look at the stats and they go, oh, he had 41. Let's actually give him votes for that. Without realizing that they probably had the correct lens on it beforehand, and vice versa, if they had the wrong view of a player and then they wanted to change it just because of looking at the stats, that might be helpful. But does it influence their thinking too much? On the other hand, does it give them that confirmation of some of the harder decisions that they have to make? Will it help them come to that final decision and make sure it's the right one? So there's two sides to it. I don't really know where I stand on that. I think I'd lean towards keeping it statless, potentially, but I don't know. I'd have to think more about it and hear more opinions about it to sort of work out all the different pros and cons of doing that. The other thing that everyone is saying, and everyone says it every year, is changing who decides the award. And this I don't understand at all. Like, why are we? Everyone else has their own award. The coaches award already exists. It's also a midfielders award, as so many people have pointed out, and that's like the whole point that everyone makes is, oh, it's a midfielders award, and the coaches award gives recognition to other players. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Yeah, sure. Jacob Wiedering might pick up three coaches' votes, or Harris Andrews might pick up five coaches' votes in a week. The top 10 are still all midfielders. I'd go as far as to say I haven't looked at the any further than the top 10 or a few under that, but I'd say the top 20 is all midfielders. Let's have a look at that, and we'll confirm that because if it is, it just further confirms the point. What's this? Oh, round 24. Here we go. Nick, Cripps, Heaney, Sarong, Neal, Bont, Goulden, Merritt, Warner, Butters, Treloar, Horn-Francis, Rowell, Brayshaw, Newcombe, Walsh, Anderson, McCluggage. Jeremy Cameron is the first nod midfielder on the list. And he got 16 Brownlow votes. So he's getting Brownlow votes too. 8, 12, 16. The top 18 in the Coaches Award are all midfielders. I'm sorry. It's the same. It's the same. Then you look at the people say the media. Who's voting on the All Australian team? It's past players who are in the media. What is the All Australian team notorious for? Shoving midfielders into the team because they are the best players. So then who do you give it to? The players. I'm sure the players MVP top 15 is all midfielders as well. I don't think we have access to that full list, but the top three was pretty similar to the rest of the awards. I'm pretty sure the top three for the players MVP was Bont, Cripps, and Heaney. So who do we then give it to? Unless you can improve the method in which the umpires are doing it, why would you change who's giving the award out? It doesn't make sense. It's the umpires award. That's the point of it. So do away with all that because that is ridiculous in my opinion. Um, but anyway, all right. So with all that in mind, let's do the review of my votes. So to recap, my top 10, well, top 13, because I'm going to go through those three players that I had above 20 as well. To recap my top 13, we've got Cripps on 37, Nick Dacos on 36, Neil on 31, Heaney on 31, Bont on 30, Merritt on 28, Tom Green on 26, Sarong on 26, Butters 25, Goulden 24, and then just outside the top 10, Warner and Anderson on 23, and Treloar on 22. We can now review that with the actual votes, which I don't have up. So let's get those. Okay, so first I had Patrick Cripps. He did come first. I had him 8 votes lower than what he got, but still both reflective of the dominant season he's had. I think I was on the mark there. He just did pick up votes that he probably shouldn't have in the end, which pushed him a significant amount higher than what I had him, but nonetheless dominant from him. Nick Dacos had 38. I had him on 36, fairly close. Again, he was picking up a couple of games where he picked up votes where he probably shouldn't have, that pushed him above that tally. But generally, I was even more on the mark with Nick there. Next is where we get a little bit off the mark. So should we go with my ones and then say what they got? I think we do that. So Lockie Neal, I had on 31 in equal third. He finished on 22. Now, I was pretty on the mark with the start of his season, starting slow there. I think I had him on 6 votes by round 10. And by round 10 in the actual count, he had 5. So, like, fine margins. I think I might have given him a 2-voter where he had a 1. So he had a couple of 1-voters until round 9. And then late season, I just gave him a lot more votes than what he got. He had a lot of 3s at the end in the last 8 games, he had five threes. But those 5 rounds before those last 8, I had him getting a lot more votes than what he got. He only had a couple, and I think I had a couple of threes in that period. Like, yeah, so I was just off the mark with Lachie Neale in the end. Um, Next to him on 31, I had Isaac Heaney. He had 28, so fairly close with him. They had him dropping off a lot more after the suspension. They gave him two threes, and that's it. Um, and I had him on a few more. Actually, no, I had him on two threes there. Where did we differ? Probably a little bit before the suspension there, obviously. But yeah, like fairly close. You know what it was? It was early season. It was early season where in opening round they gave him nothing, and in round one they gave him two, and I had him on three in both those games. I don't know how he got no votes in opening round. That's just baffling. So that would have really evened him out to what I had him at, almost, in the end. Next up, I had Marcus Bontempelli on 30 votes in fifth. This is where it all just derails so hard. I like there's no explanation for this in my opinion. He was getting robbed votes in games where he had like 32 touches and 2 goals and was actually visually dominant, like clearly dominant in that game. He had 19 votes. It was just votes scattered throughout. He only had 4 3-vote performances, which I think is just ridiculous. But yeah, early season just didn't pick up anything. He was on 4 votes by round 10, which I think is just so low. Like I had him on 6, 8, 10, 11 by round 10, and they had him on 4. I don't even have an explanation for why they would think that this should have. I, I'm speechless, honestly. I don't know how he's gone that low. Another player who went very low is the player I had next. Zach Merritt I had on 28 in sixth, and I've had to press show me more results to find Zach Merritt because he only had 18 votes. 4 3 voters packed together in that first 10 rounds. I think it was the stretch between round 6 and round 9, where he had 3 votes. Um, that's a lie. It's between round 5 and round 8. I think I had him on threes in that entire stretch anyway. No, I didn't. I gave him a 2 in round 6, but it's not the point because that late season where I think he just should have picked up more votes. He had 6 votes in there in a span of like 5 weeks and then just finished the season picking up nothing. Um, which I think is interesting. Maybe I have a heightened view of Zach Merritt. That's something that I have to think about. But why would I when I don't like Essendon? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like they've underrated Zach Merritt massively in all respects this year. He should feel underdone for the season he's had. Sarong and Green next. I said on that podcast last week that they could both easily go higher, and they did. Granted, Tom Green only went one higher um, on 27, but Sarong went on 28. They both did very well. They both probably came out with vote tallies that were reflective of the years that they had, in my opinion. Sarong finishes equal fourth. Tom Green finishes sixth. And they're both fantastic. So I think I did well there. Zach Butters I had on 25 in ninth. And he came, I was going to say second, third on 29. So 4 more votes than what I had him on. Again, it's fairly on the money there, in my opinion. But yeah, one on to Zach Butters. And then Errol in 10th I had on 24. And he had 25. So again, pretty close. Warner and Anderson in equal 11th. I had on 23 each. Warner had 23. No, Anderson is where this falls flat. He had 14. I think he got absolutely done dirty by the umpires this year. Like there were Gold Coast wins where he was just clearly the best on the ground. And he didn't get anything from it. And then losses where he probably should have gotten maybe 1 or 2. And he just didn't. So, I mean, look, it is what it is. And then Adam Treloar had on 22 in equal 13th. Equal 13th? Outright 13th. And he beat Mark Bontempelli. He had 26 votes. Fantastic year for him. I think anything 3 to 4 votes either way is not too far off. So I'm pretty happy with that as well. Um, so yeah, had 13 players hitting the 20 vote mark, and in the end, 8, 12, 13 players hit the 20 vote mark. It just wasn't the 13 players I expected with Bont and Merritt and Anderson falling out. But yeah, not too bad for me. I'm pretty happy with my result. Got the winner, got the second place getter, um, and got a few in that range underneath them as well. So pretty good.